Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So you were appointed to this job 7 months ago. It's a nice paying job in the region of what, 100 grand, give or take?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And you've given up that job. Explain why.
It's because I feel very, very strongly about the fact that unless we actually impose the same sort of standards and regulations on the fracking industry as we do on any other construction or extractive industry, then the fracking's just not going to be able to happen in this country.
Are you saying they're too strict or they're too loose?
They're far too strict, and they're completely different from any other industry. So all I'm saying is that actually the same rules should apply to fracking as they do to anything else, and sort of having a different set of rules for fracking is making it completely impossible.
But there's been quite a lot of objections from local people whenever the Quadrilla or anyone else decides to try and do any experimentation and do some sort of just looking around and seeing if there might be fracking gas available in a particular area. There has been huge opposition from local people a lot of the time.
Well, this is
a lot of people say they don't want it in their area.
Well, this is what's really interesting. And my job, which has been an absolute dream job, has been to go to these local communities and talk to people about their concerns about fracking. And actually what I've found is a very small number of people who are very vocal, very organised, very good at getting into radio phone-ins and onto the local paper letters pages, but absolutely far outnumbered by local businesses who are absolutely crying out for the jobs that the fracking industry would bring. Now, Lancashire, which is the most advanced in all of this, is right on the doorstep of Blackpool, where we've got some of the highest youth unemployment rates in the country, and you've got kids there who are absolutely desperate for the jobs that fracking could bring. And you know, actually the sort of public perception of the popularity of fracking is completely at odds with what you see on the ground when you go to Lancashire, Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, North Nottinghamshire, where they really want the jobs.
A lot of people might be concerned and say, well, they'd like to have shale gas available, they'd like to have fracking, but I'd rather it wasn't at the end of my road. I don't want all the noise from the lorries. I don't want we're told with these risks of mini earthquakes, contamination of the water supply. Do you think that that fracking is the future? We've seen in America a mass expansion of fracking. It's not certainly brought a cheaper energy to American households. Also, a lot of big issues in America about energy security, not having to be so reliant on oil and gas coming out of the Middle East or Russia supplies. How significant do you think the fracking industry could be in the UK in terms of as a percentage of our energy?
It could be hugely significant. I mean, we've been importing gas more and more since North Sea oil and gas is starting to run out quite dramatically. So 50% of all the gas that's in the pipelines here comes from abroad, and we're bringing it in from as far away as Qatar. And the carbon footprint of liquefying the gas, putting it on a tanker, shipping it halfway across the globe, and then putting it back into our gas network here is massive in comparison to what we would get out of the ground here.
So you're saying that if we did want to be green, that fracking would be one of the routes we could do that?
Exactly. And that's exactly the point that I'm trying to make, is that, for all the sort of environmental lobbies sort of campaigning against fracking, they should be fracking's number one fan. They should be really pushing the government to get fracking while we try and bridge that gap between the renewables that we're using at the moment, which is absolutely negligible. Do you know, for example, how much of our total energy consumption came from wind last year?
How much?
It was less than 5%, and solar is 0.5%. I mean, we're absolutely nowhere near being able to switch fossil fuels
So
off.
even if those are long-term aims and are desirable aims, even if you take those two, they're not achievable right now. We were talking to the Global Warming Policy Foundation a bit earlier about our gas central heating and things like that. Virtually everyone in the world's got a gas boiler, haven't they, at the moment? In which case, we are still going to need gas for quite a few years to come.
Absolutely, and actually gas is a really much lower carbon emitting fuel than coal, for example, or even biomass, wood pellets, which people think are sort of really good for the environment, are actually absolutely terrible for the environment.
We keep discovering that everything we think is the big answer is actually much worse. We had this with diesel cars, we had this with wood burning stoves, and actually it turns out every new thing we discover a new problem with it.
Well, I think the problem actually is that we do knee-jerk policy making. So we've got the environmental lobby sort of making a big noise, and ministers respond very, very quickly without actually looking into the details of things. So that's exactly exactly how bad policy is made. And that's all I'm saying is have a look at this dispassionately, take a step back and actually recognise how fracking will get our carbon emissions down in the immediate term.
Green Party co-leader Jonathan Bartlett was on the show earlier, and he was saying, look, you've actually spent most of your time having meetings. You're supposed to be sort of, working between the local communities and the fracking companies. You spent most of your time at meetings with Quadrilla and the like, rather than with local people. You used to work in that industry. He basically said, we know where your loyalties lie. What would you say to that?
Well, it's rubbish. I've spent most of my time talking to local residents and talking to local businesses. I do talk to the industry, and I'm a supporter of safe and sensitively done fracking. I am the commissioner for fracking. It's exactly the same as the small business commissioner. Is very supportive of small businesses. I would hope.
It's a strange job to take on.
Exactly. So yes, I do. I talk to the industry because it is about raising those local concerns that people have got with the industry and making sure that the industry responds to those. So I have to talk to them, and it's only right that I do so.
And what about the concerns people have? And we've seen, they have some of these, I know, because I've looked into them, have been scare stories coming out of the United States about, people turning on their tap and, fire coming out of it. It's just nothing whatsoever to do with shale gas and fracking. But there are concerns, certainly in America, and I know we've got much stricter environmental rules here, but mini earthquakes, contamination of the water supply, and this fracking is banned in a number of EU countries. Are some of those concerns, in your view, genuine concerns that need to be addressed?
I think the genuine concern is that those people, and you mentioned it earlier, people who don't want any industrialisation, they've moved out into the countryside because they like it there, and they don't want to have an industry there. And I totally understand that. But those safety concerns, and especially the health concerns, where it's been, a lot of the Green campaigners have been saying that actually fracking causes cancer and low birth weight babies. I think that's an absolute disgrace. There's absolutely no evidence for that. And actually going around telling pregnant women that their babies are going to be born with defects because they've got fracking nearby is far more likely, to cause health problems than actually fracking is going to. And in fact, the complete opposite is true. In those areas, those deprived areas in America where fracking has come and people have become much, much wealthier, their health outcomes, who knew, being richer, are far greater than they were before. So actually the opposite is true. The contamination of water, the use of sand, they are scare stories. There's nothing materially different about fracking for gas. It's a method of getting oil and gas out of the ground from any other method of getting oil and gas out of the ground.
Which we've been doing for centuries.
But it is no safer and it's no more dangerous. It's not unique apart from its awful name.
Robert Halfon, you're a Conservative MP, you're not in government, but do you not feel that if the fracking czar effectively says, look, there's no point in me doing my job because we're just not going ahead with the fracking, which she is supposed to be sort of overseeing a lot of that, that it's a failure of your government?
Well, I think Natascha's right. I think the government need to get a grips with this. This could bring thousands of jobs. It'll cut energy bills. And as Natascha's just said, it's actually potentially more environmentally friendly than some other forms of energy. So I think the government really need to listen to what Natascha has done. It's a great personal sacrifice resigning today and not just cave in because it looks, politically expedient, but actually do what is right for the country.
Benjamin Butterworth, you're, I keep saying he's young and right on and the like. I thought that fracking was supposed to be one of the answers to all of our relatively green energy prayers, but it seems to me a lot of people on the environmental side, they don't like nuclear, they don't like oil, they don't like. Again, realistically, we're not going to run all of our energy on solar power and wind turbines in probably ever, but definitely not in the near future. In which case, isn't fracking one of the best options?
Natascha raises some good points about other failures, which are probably relevant when you're looking at, how we change it into being cleaner and greener. But the fact is, when there are so many questions that scientists are raising, when there are so many concerns, when there have been so many examples in America of things where they're not quite sure why something happened or to the extent to which it can happen, like the earthquakes, the mini earthquakes, I think stuff like that is a reason for government, of all things, to stop and make people listen. And also, there are concerns about your links with the industry, the amount of money we've worked with them in the past, and you weren't able to provide full emails on the freedom of information that Greenpeace did. And so I think when those questions are there, government's place is to be careful, and I think they probably did the right thing.
Natascha, what would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I'd just respond that all those sort of questions about emails are complete nonsense and a perfect example of how, rather than actually engaging with a debate, you sort of attack the person who's the messenger. But also those health and safety concerns are not really concerns that are anything outside normal construction industry. If you applied the standards that are being applied to fracking, you would not build another hospital, you would not build another school, you'd probably not have a house building program. And I just think that we need to just kind of get more rational about the debate and sort of stop being so hysterical about, scaremongering examples from that don't even exist in America, and actually get fracking in order to get our carbon emissions down.
Okay, and Natascha Engel, former fracking czar, thank you very much indeed for joining us. 8:46 is the time. You're listening to The Breakfast Show on Talk Radio.